Because if you want great outputs from AI, you need to put in great inputs. Garbage in, garbage out has never applied more than it does in the world of AI.
Every solo entrepreneur has two versions of themselves living their head at the same time. The one who trusts their gut and nails it, and the one who trusts their gut and walks straight into a mistake they never saw coming. Same person with the same instincts. And the only difference between those two outcomes is whether anyone else was actually in the room when the decision got made. So the real question isn't whether your gut is any good at high-level, big-time decisions. It's whether you're willing to let anyone check it. And that's what today is all about. We're talking about why almost everything you run solo has a blind spot built into it. How you actually build something that'll tell you the truth instead of just agreeing with you. And then Peter's going to walk me through building a real one live for one of my own businesses. No pre-picked names, no script for how it turns out. I'm Joe Downs. With me is Peter Swain. We're just a couple of successful idiots who figured out how to use AI to improve our lives and power our businesses. And that's what we try to do with each and every episode. Peter, true or false, embrace yourself.
I am.
A Canadian advisory board would rather apologize for the bad news than actually deliver it to you straight.
I don't think I can answer the question because you didn't add an A in there somewhere.
Another shot.
I love Canada. I think of it as the halfway house between America and the UK. So
I are half expecting our producer Doug to come in here and defend this position, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
Well, on his behalf, I apologize.
What are we apologizing for? Calling Canadians nice?
Did the Canadians know what they're? Isn't that just the default? Like we apologize.
I'm just accusing them of being nice.
But it's like the UK. If like we see three people in a line, we'll stand behind it. We don't know what we're queuing for. We just, I mean, that's what we do, right? There's a queue. We'll join the queue. I just think Canadians just say sorry as a reflex.
Oh, hilarious. Well, you asked, I delivered.
Goodbye, Canadian listeners. We loved having you. Thank you.
You asked for it. I delivered Canadian humor.
Thank you for the break of Brit for one episode. I look forward to next week.
When do we get to the Americans? All right, quick ask before we get into it. If you got 30 seconds and you haven't left us a rating or review, we would greatly appreciate it. All right, today, as I said, why almost every part of your life, not just your business, does better with a board of advisors that's actually allowed to not just advise you, but disagree with you. Then the real anatomy of how you build one, including the part nobody tells you, which is how you figure out who even belongs on your board when you don't already know the names. Or, maybe you got a blind spot there. And then we're going to close with actually building one live. So Peter's going to walk me through not the, critical step-by-step process, but just the high level of how you build the board, because obviously AI can help walk you through it. All right, so Peter, that tension I just named, whether you're willing to let anyone check your gut, walk me through why that matters everywhere, not just for one big decision, personal decisions, health, kids.
I want to clarify something first, if I can. Because I don't know if you said it. When we said a board, we're talking about a virtual board, a digital board, an AI board. So this isn't about getting the AI to inform you of who your 7 real life people should be. I just want to make sure as people are listening to this, they can get at this. So like, this is for the solopreneur, the entrepreneur. This is for people that aren't yet at board level. How do they get access to a board, right?
Yeah, thank you for making that clear. I should have made that more clear. And yes, a virtual board that's going to live in your, if you have an app on your phone, in your AI app, whatever it is, Chat,
Perfect.
Claude. But one that, we're going to get into this, but it's not just for personal decisions. It's, like health and the kids, and they're also business, right? So, or not just, if you were thinking I just meant business, good news. I mean, we'll get into it, but you can have a board and multiple boards for each kind of silo of your life, because certainly, maybe your own personal advisor versus...
Have you ever heard of survivor bias?
Yes.
So the best example of survivor bias that we know of, or the funniest example anyway, is the Second World War. And planes would go, take off from the UK, they'd fly over to Europe and Germany, and then they come back. And lots of the planes that came back had bullet holes in the wings.
Mm-hmm.
So the RAF engineers, and obviously these are, very, very smart people, British or not, they're wicked smart people, top of their game. They came to the conclusion that they should lead line the wings.
Wings and the fuselage right down the
No,
middle.
just the wings.
Are you sure? Because I think, okay.
Yep, wait for the end, because you'll understand why. And what then happened is they were too heavy to fly. So they lost maneuverability. Until somebody came along and said, what are we doing? And they said, well, it seems to be that we keep getting shot in the wings, so we should lead line the wings. To which the guy said, no, I think you'll find that when they get shot in the fuselage, they go down and they never come back. So the ones that were getting shot in the fuselage never made it home because you've got pilots and gasoline and pretty important stuff in the middle. So, but we have this thing called survivor bias. Now, we have around, it's about 40 psychological biases built into our brain. And they're inaccurate things in our operating system. And they're designed to do one thing, which is to make the brain need to do less work. Because the brain uses about a third to half of the calories that we use. So if you use 2,000 calories, the brain is using somewhere around 800, 1,000 of those calories are just thinking. And if you were to go back a millennia, food was scarce, calories were scarce. So lazy thinking was a survival trait. Right? You don't want to have to think. You don't want to, if you're trying to throw a spear at a deer, you don't want to sit and have to get out a textbook and work out the math, because by the time you do that, the deer's already run away. You've got to be able to throw the spear at the deer, right? So your question was, why do we have blind spots? And we have blind spots because our brain is lazy. Our brain is trained to not necessarily give us the best answer. Our brain is trained to give us the first answer.
Okay.
So how many times have you planned something or done something? And I'm guessing the answer is like 50 in the last 5 days. And as soon as you've done the thing, you look back at the thing and go, I can't believe I did that. Like, everything in hindsight becomes very obvious. So I'll give you an example from our world. We just started running paid ads to one of our programs. And there's in the application, there's a qualification. Do they qualify or not? And if they qualify, we're putting them on our sales team's calendar. And if they don't qualify, we're saying, essentially, sorry, you don't qualify, come back later, and then we send them some emails. It took 3 days of that running for me to call the sales team and go, I can't believe we're being so stupid. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, we've got new salespeople on the team, right? They're like, yeah. I'm like, why don't we put the not qualified onto the new sales team? Because then, some of them are still going to close. 1 in 10, 1 in 20 are still going to become revenue, which takes our average revenue per transaction up, which is good. But 2, we start to hear more objections. So we get more data on our offer. And 3, our sales team aren't sitting there twiddling their thumbs. They're live on calls, which means they're getting reps, which means they're getting better. So we were throwing away leads that we are buying from Facebook at $120 a lead. And we were just literally just burning it and only going after this 1 or 2. And in hindsight, and as I explain that, it's really obvious. But some wicked smart people, myself included, didn't see it. We have these all the time, 24/7, 365. Why am I not losing weight? My marriage isn't going the way I want it to go. My business isn't growing as I want it to grow. But 99.8% of your DNA, my DNA, Tony Robbins' DNA, President Trump's DNA, Arnold Schwarzenegger's DNA are the same. We are 99.8% the same thing. But the wisdom and experiences that we have massively shape our capability to both see our own blind spots, and lessening our ego, which is what we're going to get into, allows us to hear other people's opinions a lot quicker. Like you and I were looking at my deep dive page last week, and you're like, Pete, of course that doesn't work because of X, Y, Z. Now, with respect to you, I've been in this business for 30 years in digital marketing and presentation and layouts. You haven't. You are absolutely right. And I can tell you that the data backs up that you were absolutely right. But I'd been looking at it for so long and I had such a blind spot to it that I can't see it. You say it and I'm like, oh my God, that's so obvious. Like, well, I'm being a complete idiot.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is I have not been using boards or mini boards, which I'm going to introduce here, at all lately. I've been so head down busy, and it's so stupid. And I just made some mistakes recently. We just did an investor webinar on a self-storage facility we're buying last night. And the whole thing was, we're a small boutique company, so we don't really have an entire investment department, investor relations department, that would have set up the whole webinar and done it all properly and this and that, right? So it's left up to me, and I'm doing it. And I'm making mistakes as I go. And, and then I get to last night and the link to the Zoom, I set it up through a registration website, but it didn't work and I didn't check it. And so now I'm scrambling 5 minutes before this thing to get people the link that registered. And then, of course, did I do that right? No, because there was a passcode I needed to include with it as well. It's like just a whole debacle, right? So, and I'll get to why I'm telling you this story in a second, but in hindsight, had I created a little mini marketing investor relations board, which would, in this case, would have been more technical in nature. Hey, this is what I need to do. Make sure I don't screw it up. It might have walked me through all of those steps, right? And made sure. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm giving that example is because, one, I didn't do it. But two, it's because the muscle memory needs to be developed to even think of that. And that's why I wanted to introduce this show.
I think this is a little bit off topic, but I think it's very much on the topic, but not exactly on what we were going after. But I think it would add a lot of value, and I think it might add value to you. So I'm going to go for it anyway. So in Claude, when you go into settings, there's custom instructions.
Yeah.
I have 2 standing things that have gone through every iteration of ChatGPT, Claude, Hermes. All of my systems have these 2 things in them, which I think you might like. Number 1, I have in there, I forget to delegate.
Oh, me too.
Here are the people available to me and here are their skill sets. Whenever I ask you to do anything, your first answer should be to check whether one of these people could probably do it for me. So I would say, I need to set up a webinar, and it would go, I don't think you do, Pete. I think Mari and Tristan need to do that. Should I draft the message on Slack for you? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be a good idea. Okay, job done. But the second one I added about 2 years ago. Your name's on that one, on this one, of my in-person inner circle and what I think that they're good at. So you're on it.
I don't know if I want to know.
Kari's on it. Liz is on it. So there's like 7 or 8 different people of, this is your go-to person about this, and this is your go-to person about this, and this is your go-to person about this. And then the standing instruction is, if Pete is facing a problem and trying to solve the problem, you should review these people to see if their input is going to help. So it will prompt me, like when you get those kind of like can we chat? Can we talk for 15 minutes? That's normally because Claude has gone, Joe's probably going to have a good insight on this.
Interesting. That's very good advice.
I know that's not where we're going, but I think it's part of that equation of,
It's part of understanding, which is where we're going. I thank you so much for that. I'm gonna implement both of those.
I'm getting to this because I just set that webinar up for you. Like, it would have taken me 5 minutes as a friend if you're like, Pete, can you just, because I want to focus my energy on the delivery of this.
Right.
Could you just make sure these 10 people get this email and set this thing up for me? I'm like, yeah, sure.
Which we nailed in the recap. We talked about it. I was like, God, we are really good at this part. But to get here was a nightmare. So no, that's great advice.
So you're a clutch player. That's what we're hearing from this.
Depends on the sport. But that's what I wanted to introduce, because when I think of board, and that's why I told you that story. When I think of board, and I've had a couple set up for a while. I don't even use them the way I should. And I think part of the reason is because I'm thinking like board of directors, like high level decisions only. And that's not using the power of AI even remotely close to how we could use it. Like if I had I need to set up a marketing. You're right. I need to delegate. And I think we solved that. Who's going to do it? But even that person that I delegate to, one of our newest employees, is not really in their scope, but we're going to make it part of it. He could use a board, a mini marketing board, because he have no experience. I'm delegating to him not because he's experienced. I'm delegating to him because it's something I need someone else to figure out how to manage, right? But he will do that better with a marketing board that will make sure that he misses nothing. And maybe you'll be on that board, right? But my point is, in these silos of life, whether it's personal, or I've got, this is how I deal with my kids, or maybe you've got a kid, one of your children has some special situation, good or bad, right? Where you need additional advice because, that's where you go for, do you keep a running dialogue of what's going on with this child? Again, when I say good or bad, it could be, I think you've mentioned, and I don't mean bad, but you've mentioned one of your kids as, you say it much more eloquently than I do, but
neurospicy.
There you go. I can't even pronounce it, right? But so maybe that is its own board where your other child doesn't need that, right? I'm not saying names on purpose there, but maybe if you had a third kid in this case, using your family, and they were some incredible gymnast, right, and on track for the Olympics, and going to play, represent either the UK or Great Britain or the British Isles or one form of however you guys do it for the Olympics. Subtle jab in there that you're not even smiling about, but maybe that would be its own board, right, with its own different set of advisors for parenting advice, because that child's schedule might be drastically different than a normal child's, just based on training and stuff. But then you have, how to deal with family members, and I haven't even mentioned work yet, other than for myself with marketing. But I have a board, but it's just a general board, and it's got like the big names on it. The Elon Musks and the Warren Buffetts and the Marcus Aurelius, right? And Ben Franklin, who I think is, by the way, every single board, I don't care what you're doing, should have Ben Franklin on it. The man's advice is always the best. But I have this big board, but I don't have these little silos that I go to for these little things, these little projects. And I wanted people to understand we're not harnessing AI the right way, me included. And that's why I wanted to do this episode. So I guess in short, every part of life needs its own flavor of, it needs its own board and its own flavor on that board of pushback. And again, by board, I don't want, that's one of those words that's like paralyzing. Like, think of these big boardrooms and boards. I just mean mini set of advisors, right?
We're saying a board of advisors, not a board of directors.
Yeah. Okay. So, but in this case, even that sounds big. It's your go-to people, right? It's your BFFs that you're always calling about this situation, except the difference is you're going to, instead of your BFFs who aren't really qualified, right? They're just there to listen and give their own experience back. Maybe their experience back is not going to be relevant or good for you. You want to create the perfect set of, I want to say people, but it's really just advice channels. And that might be from people that are living or dead, right? And look, and maybe even one general life board that would tie it all together. But point is, Peter, I want one, and I want you, but I think where most folks will struggle is how to set it up. What is the anatomy of the board? How do I even determine who should be on it? What does it need to have to work? Right? So not just a list of names, because I'm guilty of
there's
going
something
right
before
to the names. So
there's something way before that.
Okay. So walk us through what is the right way to do this, regardless of the purpose?
Okay, so step one, I want to recommend something without an affiliate. I want to recommend this to anyone that can see this. Is what's called a moon ball, right? And it's weird shaped. So when you bounce it doesn't bounce straight back.
Is this just a stress reliever that you're demonstrating here?
It's a thinking. This is my number one AI tool. A bouncy ball, because I spend a lot of time thinking before I spend my time doing. And the question that we're asking here is fantastic, because I think one of the things AI does really well is it makes you clarify your intentions. Because if you want great outputs from AI, you need to put in great inputs. Garbage in, garbage out has never applied more than it does in the world of AI. So one of the things you didn't explicitly call out then, Joe, is what does success look like to you? Like, as Joe Downs as an individual, like I've gone through this exercise of how do I want to show up as a dad? How do I want to show up as a husband? Where does my health fit into that journey? Where does my spirituality fit into that journey? Where does my sex life fit into that journey? Where does my financial life fit into that journey? Where does my business fit into that journey? Because newsflash, if you're listening to this, you can't have it all. Like Elon is one of the most successful financial business people on the planet. And I believe he's on his third marriage. Steve Jobs denied that his daughter was his daughter until his deathbed and said that he would undo everything he ever did to undo that mistake. So in his words, not successful. So before we start planning our board, my ask of everyone is to, well, if you could have it all your way for the rest of your life, on the day you die, you look back from this moment on, what would it look like? What would that be? Because succeeding in business at the expense of your family is a foolish endeavor, unless that's the choice that you made. I'm not in judgment or assessment at all here. If you say, I want to be a billionaire, and I don't care if I've got any friends, any family, I don't care if I weigh 400 pounds, I don't care if I die at 60 because I want to be a billionaire, I personally wouldn't agree with that. But if that's your considered view, then I respect it. So my first ask of people is to have that conversation with Claude. Say, I want to define what success looks like to me. Help me, ask me questions in order for me to understand what my life, if I could design my life, what it would look like. Because it's the strategic coach, start with the end in mind. What is it we're trying to build? So that would be my first ask.
You're talking at a very broad level right now. This would be true if even just take my marketing example, how to set up the right webinar, right? I needed to, if I grabbed 3 advisors, right, to say, this is how you do it, set it up, this is the marketing messages. All I would have needed done is to say, hey, look, I want 50 people showing up to this thing and I want it going off without a hitch. And I want it easy. I want them to register and I want it to be easy for them to get into, right? That's describing success.
But yes and no. What if having that 50 people meant pulling an all-nighter? Would you still want the 50 people? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. So what you're saying is that your sleep and your energy is more important to you than having the 50 people. If you had to make the choice, I'm not saying you do, but if you had to make the choice, you've cancelled, rightly, you've cancelled meetings with me to spend time with your children.
Mm-hmm.
Which tells me that that's more important to you. On a minute-by-minute instance basis, that's the priority that goes above it. So you've just said that your health, your well-being, and your kids are more important than 50 people being on that webinar. So that's going to massively change the advice that we get across a daily or weekly basis. Before we even get to this execution of the webinar, life is about sacrifices. You're going to be making choices consistently between all of your goals. My coach, I love this phrase called strategic imbalance. You're never going to have life balance. It's never going to be 10 hours here, 10 hours here, 10 hours here. As entrepreneurs, we are constantly going, right, this week I'm all in over here, and this week I'm all in over here, and I'm going to be pulling around all of these places. So that's my first question to everybody: of define what a successful life looks like to you. What is your prioritization of your values and your beliefs? Once we have that, we can then get to the next part of the process of like, okay, if I was to have a bunch of people advising me, now that you understand what my life priorities are and how things work, alive, living, dead, fictional, who would they be? What would they be? Like, you might really laugh at this, but on my synthetic board, which is what I call them, synthetic boards, is Winnie the Pooh.
You know, when you just said fictional a second ago, I was like, that never occurred to me, because it could pull the character, right?
Well, fictional allows you to draw from archetypes that have been
Yeah.
written by authors for a specific purpose.
Yeah. So Winnie the Pooh. All right.
Winnie the Pooh. Like, Winnie the Pooh
Who
has
doesn't
this
like
whole...
Winnie the Pooh?
but his whole thing is like, okay, it didn't work. It's okay. You know, as long as we're walking through the forest with friends, life's going to be all right.
You got Tigger.
And
you got Eeyore.
yeah. And I find myself getting too, if something goes wrong, I'm too invested. And when I get too invested, my blood pressure goes up. I stop sleeping right. And when I stop sleeping right, I stop exercising right. And when that happens, more stuff goes wrong. One of my criteria of success is being able to go, okay, that didn't go right. It's all right. So I don't want just people like Elon Musk on the board, because I don't want Elon's life. I fully respect him. I think he is a powerhouse and nothing but respect. But the fact that he sleeps in his office on his sofa for 2 hours a night is not a life I want. Thank you, but no thank you. I'm really grateful for what I think you're doing for humanity, and I'm glad you're doing it, but I ain't doing that, because he is going to die somewhere in the next 10, 15 years, because that is not healthy. And I would rather my businesses fail and I spend the time with my kids if I had to make that choice. So we have to be really careful about balancing the energies on this synthetic board of saying, okay, well, who does this look like? Who can become in? Now, one of them you might like. One of them is somebody I never knew, but they're there to sub people in. I don't know if they're actually even a real person, like even a fictional person. But I've told one person on my board, your only job is to actually bring somebody else into the conversation that you think would be relevant to the conversation. So it's like a super sub.
Oh, that's interesting.
So there's a permanent...
It's a manager. It's making a game time decision there.
Yeah, it's like, you know what? Gandhi would do well on this. Gandhi was recently brought in because it was a community-led conversation.
You're a baseball manager. You're bringing in a pitcher to face a righty to face a lefty. That's interesting.
So we're trying to balance this out on multiple things. The type of expertise they have, how they're going to show up, what area of your life they're going to represent. So I have the family side of things, because one of the other instructions in my custom instructions is that I only ever want whole life advice. I never want advice just for my business. The advice, even if I ask a business question, it should be framed in my health, my family, my money, and my business. Because if you say to AI, I must get 50 people on this webinar, go, without those guardrails and context, it will do it at the expense of your health, at the expense of your family, at the expense of your money. Whereas what I want it to say is, Pete, you said you were going to play soccer with Olivia for 2 hours. That can't move from the plan. And we're at 14,000 steps a day. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to brief this person on the team, but we're going to do it whilst we're walking. And we're going to walk with Olivia to the soccer pitch, and you're going to split the call into 2 15 minutes. 15 minutes on the way there, then you're going to play soccer with Olivia for 30 minutes, then 15 minutes on the way back. But because of your relationship with Olivia, we're going to tell her in advance that that's what you're doing, so she's okay with it. It will do stuff like that. It will thread this needle in the weirdest and wackiest way, because it knows that it has to hit that step count, hit that calorie count, hit that sleep count, hit that family thing. And it comes up with ideas where I'm like, no, okay. So you want me to do 3 minutes with that and 8 minutes with that? And it's like, yeah, that fits the equation.
In addition to that, so not only are you executing because the board helps you execute, I'm just thinking how much less stressful that is, what you just described, because the decision without that board before that was, how am I going to juggle time with Olivia and these calls I got to make?
Correct. It was what I refer to.
This
is not, you're actually referring to another thing that's in my customer shop. We've taught this in like 1,000 courses, so I hope everyone gets value from this. But the other thing, my Claude instructions is never allowed. It is never allowed to end on a conclusion that would be categorized by the word or. It must end on a conclusion that's categorized with the word and. And this came from, I don't want to choose my family or my business. I don't want to choose my health or my money. I believe, I could be wrong, but it's a belief that empowers me. I believe there's a perfect answer to everything. Not that I can necessarily see it, but I believe there's a perfect answer to how do I do everything I want to do. And that's the goal I set AI. I set it this bombastic goal, not make me 10% more. Nah. Your job is to help me have a great marriage, a great family, be a great dad, be wealthy, run a business I'm proud of, that's growing healthy, sustainable, keeps me in integrity, all of my goals, achieve all of them. And the only time we go off the rails is when I forget to ask it, and then I come back and go, yes, I screwed up.
Right.
And I just made promises that I shouldn't have made, and now we've got to try and unwind them. But as a general rule, AI can see these patterns that are beyond us, beyond you, beyond me.
Your board is obviously very advanced and sophisticated with all these custom instructions, etc. How does someone who doesn't have one, someone listening, where do they start? How and why? And like, what's the first decision they should make? Which board to even start with?
Yeah, so I would open up, I'd be in Claude and I'd open up a new project. So I'd have this in a project because project is going to keep the memory. So we don't need to do a lot of setup. If we use a project, we don't need to kind of preset everything up too much.
Same thing if we're in chat?
I haven't used chat recently enough to tell you about projects, but yes, I believe they still have projects, and yes, they have isolated memory. So yes,
Okay.
Chat or Claude are going to have projects and they have an isolated memory. So I would just start by saying, I need help with this decision. Insert blank here. And I would like you to represent the viewpoints of the following people: Ben Franklin, Elon Musk.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're throwing around a lot of names, but I feel like that's pre-programming the board. And the names we're throwing around could be great. How does someone even know what names they should include on the board?
Yep. Then I would say, I'd like the opinion of 5 different people, 2 of which should be largely of the same belief, ethics, values as me, 2 of which should be of your selection that you feel have industry expertise on this subject, and 1 should be completely left field that will bring the conversation in a direction that I hadn't thought of.
Okay, so, and that sounds more like a board I'd be using in business.
But why? Why wouldn't that work for, I want to lose 20 pounds?
I guess it could. So in that case, if you're giving it the context of health, it's going to bring in doctors or nutritionists or whatever that are going to agree with your philosophies or disagree or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example, because if you bring in 3 dietitians, they all have very different ideas of what diet you should be looking at.
Okay. How do you even know which boards or mini advisor groups you should create? Like, I feel like you should have everyone should have one main one, personal one. That's almost like a venting partner, right? Who just knows everything about you. But then beyond that, don't you think there's areas where you specialize? Like,
I think that I would agree, and I would say that I think the path to success is momentum. So I would just start this process for anybody as small as possible, because what we've discussed is kind of, if we look at mine, it's kind of an end state. It's kind of, here's where you'll be in a year or 2 years or 6 months or 3 months. But I think it starts with one conversation with one persona, and then adding in a second persona, and then adding in a third persona. And I think it's something that grows with you instead of you start something great. I think you grow into it.
and if I'm not sure of the names, what's my conversation with AI going to look like to lead me to the right names?
I want help with the following. Which 5 people would have an interesting perspective that would help me make a decision?
And then it's all context from there, including your outcome.
And you could say, historical, present, fictional, it doesn't matter. I always like adding in one that's like, I always like asking AI to add in one that's completely left field, that isn't the norm. So you'll always get the Malcolm Gladwells, the Ben Franklins, the Warren Buffetts, the Elon Musks, the Steve Jobs. But it's fascinating when you add in King James II or Gandhi or, someone that you'd have never thought of. You're like, yeah, that's a good point.
Interesting. So what are you able to just roll a prompt off your tongue? Like if I said, give me the actual prompt for when you don't even know who belongs on your board, like what can someone listening rewind this and then copy to put into AI?
Yeah, so for yourself, it would be something like, I'm building Storage Moguls.
Mm-hmm.
It obviously knows what Storage Moguls is. I want a board of advisors that are going to help me at a strategic level make decisions about growth. So first of all, isolate the core areas of this business from a success-fail perspective. And second of all, suggest 3 names for each of the core areas that you just said. Go. So it's like, okay, community building is one, education delivery is another, finance is obviously another, marketing is obviously another, and it's going to just suggest the 3 names. Then you're kind of there.
For the listener, let me set this up. So the segment 3 of the show, this is what I wanted to do, and you're just kind of jumping into it here, which is great, is I don't have a board of advisors for storagemoguls.ai. And this is extremely selfish on my part. I acknowledge that. However, because as my consultant on this business, everything about it, I thought this would be the perfect business for the listener to hear the creation of a board live, right? Otherwise it'd be a whole interview process of you back and forth with me, but you know everything about the business and you just start to lay it out. So knowing what you know about Storage Moguls, what it is, right? It's a community. It's an education platform. It's going to have deal flow going through it. From the community standpoint, there's breakout rooms, there's chat rooms, there's a chat bot, and it's all based on people learning how to source, evaluate, underwrite, negotiate, close, and manage self-storage or other storage verticals. Right. But basically self-storage. So that's the setup for you guys listening. Right. And we just launched it and it's going through its trials and tribulations of, like anything you launch, but I don't have a board for it. And we're making decisions. My partners and I, mostly Kristen and I, making a lot of decisions that we're second guessing all the time. And I feel like as this topic came up and I was like, this is totally what we should do for this episode. I was like, and moron, you don't even have one, nor are you using one for Storage Moguls. So for everyone listening who's got their own Storage Moguls out there, an operating business or just launched business or about to launch a business, walk us through the process. Well, like how do I identify the areas and where I need these mini boards, these mini group of advisors? And what's the right way to set them up and then use them?
Yep. Okay. So the first, it's not going to be one prompt, but there's going to be multiple steps to this.
Okay.
The first one is to make sure that it has the context on who you are, what we're trying to do, which in your case it does. Okay. So that might be as simple as a prompt that says, I'm going to ask for your help on the following subject. Tell me everything you know about it. Like literally just start there. You're going to take, markdown files and PDF files and put them into this project. Okay, step 1.
And folks, when Peter said everything is there, is because I have built Storage Moguls in one Claude project. So literally everything there is to know about Storage Moguls lives in a Claude project and has for, almost a year now. Not a year, 6 months, whatever.
Okay. So with step 1 done, we now know that the project knows who we are and what we're trying to do. My step 2 question would be to ask the project, what are the critical areas that will define the success or failure of this business, e.g., finance, marketing, community growth in your case? And I'd get it to come back with the list. Now, whenever anyone does this, my request is to remember that these things with AI are conversations, they're not edicts. So if you look at that list that it comes back and you don't agree, or you think number 5 isn't needed, but it missed this, or you think this should be changed, change it. You are the discernment layer. So whatever the AI comes back with, have the conversation until you come up with the 5 to 8 areas that are this thing survives and thrives if we get these things right. And the rest of the stuff will be nice to have, but not the most important piece.
Okay.
Okay. So once we've got the list, next step will be to say, if we were looking to form a board of advisors for these areas that we have just agreed, what 2 or 3 people would you recommend for each area? Who are the market leaders, both in terms of alive, dead, fictional, non-fictional, in these zones?
And then give the outcome of each area. So for like the financial, might want Keith Cunningham, I don't know, and Warren Buffett or something, and then and a tax advisor out of it. And
well, see, this is a great example because I'd say Warren Buffett would be a terrible addition.
Well, you're right. Bad example.
No, I'm just saying that for everybody else. That's not me like calling you out.
I'm just throwing out names, but I'm throwing out names that people would recognize. But really, what I'm trying to say is the 2 or 3 advisors in the financial area. I want them to make sure that I stay cash flow positive at all times, or I'm not taking on X amount of risk. Or my point is, I need to give that group of advisors, or the AI, a group of the outcome, so it can get me the group of advisors that will help produce that outcome. Is that right? Okay.
Yeah. So we now have the key areas. We now have the advisors. I'd then choose one from each that you feel works for the moment. We don't have to get this right. But like, yep. Okay. So let's employ Keith Cunningham. Let's employ for community building, Stu McLaren, for digital marketing, Russell Brunson, and say, and we're almost there now. Now what we want to do is say, again, this is a more Claude specific instruction, but what we want to do here is say, I now want you to represent those people as what I refer to as a synthetic board or a board of advisors. Create a skill that I can use to talk to them whenever I need to. It's now going to put these into a skill called I need to speak to my board.
Where does that skill live? How does that work? How do I use it?
Once it's done, you just literally just say, I want to speak to my board, and it will say, got it, I understand it. We don't need to know where it lives. It lives in the whole of Claude, or it lives in the whole of ChatGPT. So skills are predefined workflows.
It's a trigger.
Yeah, exactly.
So when I'm in the chat window, in whichever one, and I lead off with question for the board or question for the finance board, it's only going to activate that board.
Correct.
Is that right? Okay, got it.
So then, wherever we are, whether we're now in the project or somewhere else,
that's more helpful than you think, Peter, because that's where I was having a mental block, and that's probably why I haven't been using my board, is because I created a project that was a board, and what I'm hearing you say is, no, that's a separate project that I have to go to, leave Storage Moguls project and go there, ask it questions, and come back. You're saying all of these boards will live inside of Storage Moguls. I just have to identify them, and then there's the trigger for when I want to actually only seek their advice.
Yeah, by making them a project, you've kind of mixed together your X and Y axis, if that makes sense, because you want to be able to use a skill anywhere. So you want to be able to say, we were talking about holiday planning last week, right? Or vacation planning. We want to be able to bring in our personal board into that conversation for us. And we also want to be able to use that when we're deciding whether we're going to invest in this business over here, which will be in completely separate projects, completely separate spaces, completely separate scopes. So the board lives as a skill. Projects are holders of context. They are not holders of execution workflows.
Oh, that's very clarifying and very helpful. Okay. All right. What's next?
For bonus marks, I think you can add on as you then go through using that skill. So you're talking to your board and you start seeing, which is the whole point. You start seeing gaps in the advice or people that agree with each other. We can then say, update the skill. You can say phrases like, I want people to be more contentious. I want them to argue with each other. Or we can say, I thought Elon Musk was a great addition, but the strategies that he's bringing me are pushing me too far out of my comfort zone of what I want to do. So let's replace him. Who could we add? So see this as a living, breathing thing that evolves with you instead of seeing it as a fixed thing that stays as is.
So
I'll tell you another good one, Joe, that I just thought of that you should consider for your board, just as we were talking. Have you ever heard of Dr. Werner Vogels? He's the guy that invented AWS, and he was the one that said every single piece of development that Amazon did for Amazon should be done in such a way that it could be sellable to somebody in the future.
Pretty smart.
He is that mindset. Those are the kind of things we're looking for, of like people that are going to not just go, that's a great idea. They're going to say, hang on a second. Have you thought about this angle? Because, Slack was a development of a company trying to do a multi-person game engine. And the game engine failed. But what they realized they'd produced as a way for them to talk within the team was Slack. And Slack was the actual thing that they ended up actually selling that actually became worth money. Often within inside a business that we're running, there's actually these pockets of gold that, as we said at the beginning, that your blind spots means you don't even see.
That's so fascinating. I didn't know that about Slack. What just occurred to me a couple minutes ago when I said, what's next? And you said, well, we're kind of there, aren't we? Yeah, it's that simple. I expected a longer process, but you're right. It's just.
I mean, we can add more steps if you want, but
no. So, folks, we just built an actual board from nothing in a matter of a couple minutes, and we didn't build the board yet. But when I go to build the boards or the mini boards, you can see how quickly it's going to go. I didn't even realize how quick it was going to go. So this is low hanging fruit out there. Doesn't take more than a couple minutes to set up. Listen to what you just listened to again, rewind it if you're not sure how to do it, or get the transcript, throw it in Claude and say, hey, take what Peter said and help me create a board for my business. That was gold.
And add Winnie the Pooh just for fun.
And I love the Winnie the Pooh edition. Who doesn't need a little Winnie the Pooh in their life? All right, so to recap, almost every part of your life benefits from a board that's actually allowed to advise you or disagree with you. And I think the disagreeing is important. But Peter, actually, the thing that you kept saying was blind spots. Is that part of the instruction? Always keep an eye out for the blind spots? That would be an interesting.
100%. I have a weekly recurring scheduled task that runs through every Fathom and every Zoom call through the week, and looks for patterns in behavior that don't get me towards my goal. It is one of the most useful things that I have, because it just hits me in the face with like, whoa, I'm still doing that? I thought I'd fixed that a year ago. So that's something that maybe we should go into another episode, because it's incredibly useful to have every one of my calls reviewed from where are my behaviors, my default behaviors that I don't even know are happening, my linguistic patterns, my way I talk to some people versus other people, where are those things playing out, and how is that hurting me and hurting the people around me not achieve the things they want to achieve?
I love that, but my head was in a different place. I think you create a mini business development advisory board that reviews once a week everything that you're doing, just to see what kind of business opportunities you're missing based on what's going on. That's kind of where I was going with it, because you kept saying the blind spot and then you told the Slack story. And I'm wondering, when you're, as an entrepreneur, you're so head down focused on trying to do so many things and execute and live life and all of that, what are we missing that's right there in front of us? Right. And you could create an advisory board that's reviewing everything you're doing every week and constantly trying to come up with ideas based on what you're already doing. You didn't say once role, goal, and backstory. I noticed that as well. But that's actually involved in this whole creation, right? You got to give each.
I think that's, we should have said it more, because it is just a given of how we're going to define these things. But role, goal, and backstory is a framework or a template for us adding all the context that we need. So that first conversation we had of just make sure it knows everything about what we want and make sure it knows our goals and what we're trying to achieve. But yes, the role, goal, backstory is the right way to go around it.
You explained it. You just didn't say the words. And I just want to make sure we said them again, because I that was such an epiphany for me. And I want to make sure our listeners memorize, live, internalize, role, goal, backstory, because that is the way to effectively use AI. So anyway, to recap, folks, we're missing out. I'm including myself in this. We are missing out if we're not creating these mini boards. Creating them as skills was a new one for me. And then when you create it as a skill, now you can trigger and activate it every time you're in that chat window in the project you're in. I think that's brilliant. You just saw quickly how I'm going to be able to create a board for Storage Moguls in about 5 minutes, maybe less. So I told you at the get-go, this episode was selfishly for me, but hopefully you found it very beneficial for you as well. And if you go and build your own board this week, or multiple boards, send it to us. We would love to know what you did, how you're doing it, why you're doing it, and obviously any success stories you have with it. idiots@successfulidiots.com. idiots@successfulidiots.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. If the show has ever saved you from a bad decision, then that's the least you could do. For Peter Swain, I'm Joe Downs. We are your Successful Idiots. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.